with Matt Reeves' The Batman coming out soon, I decided to take a moment and do what every other YouTube channel is doing right now at this very second. And that's ranking the other live-action Batman movies, from worst to best. Yeah, you know, a fountain of creativity over here. Kinda like how everyone was ranking the Spider-Man movies a couple months ago before No Way Home came out. And like I just said, this will be the live-action movies, so no animated films. Although if I did Under the Red Hood or Mask of the Phantasm would be number one. Of course, this is where I tell you that this is just my opinion and your list will look completely different. But you know what? Fuck it. Not this time. So, this is the best Batman's ranking video and you're wrong if you disagree. Working title, of course. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So coming in at the very bottom is Batman and Robin. No surprise, really. Released in 1997 and directed by Joel Schumacher, Batman and Robin has George Clooney as the Batman. And this movie was responsible for killing the Batman franchise on film. The best way to describe this movie is like a 2 hours toys commercial, because that's essentially what it was. It was made just to push all these products and merchandise. The movie flopped hard as hell and received some very poor reviews from fans and critics. And nowadays it's easy to look back on this movie and see it as goofy and campy, but at the time it clearly wasn't what fans really wanted, and not really the direction they want to see Batman go in. So yeah, in hindsight, it is kind of funny, either intentionally or unintentionally, but just because it's really dumb and goofy and kind of funny sometimes, doesn't really mean that it's a good movie. You can get entertainment out of it, sure, but it really isn't that good. Now up next is another big shocker, Batman Forever. Directed again by Joel Schumacher, this time starring Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne / Batman. And I will say that I enjoy this one more than Batman and Robin. It's still weird as hell and really goofy, but what I think carries the movie are Jim Carrey's performance as the Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. Yeah, they're hammy as hell and over the top, but I got much more entertainment out of them than I did in anyone in Batman and Robin. But just like Batman and Robin, you're gonna have fun with it and find it entertaining, even though it's still not that good of a movie. But for me personally, I greatly prefer it over Batman and Robin. Before I move on to the next entry, I want to mention that I don't think Joel Schumacher is a bad filmmaker. He's made some really good movies like Lost Boys, Phone Booth, and some really entertaining movies like Falling Down, St. Elmo's Fire, and hell, I even found the number 23 interesting. So I know the guy can make some good stuff, just not the biggest fan of his Batman movies. But they can be entertaining in a goofy, campy, it's so bad it's good kind of way. Anyway, just wanted to mention that. On to the next entry. Batman Returns. Directed by Tim Burton and stars Michael Keaton as Batman, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and Danny DeVito as the Penguin. This was a follow-up to Tim Burton's other Batman movie, Batman, released in 1989. Now, I do enjoy this one quite a bit, but honestly, I feel like this one goes in a very weird direction with the characters. Mainly the Penguin. I mean, he's eating fish and he fucking looks like a penguin. Reminds me of that episode of South Park where Kyle's dad wants to be a fucking dolphin. I feel like this was Tim Burton actually being able to let loose with his weird ideas, because this was done very early in Tim Burton's career, and with the 89 Batman, nothing was that strange or crazy or weird. But as soon as that became a success, it seems like they gave him more freedom to do what he wanted to do. And so he got to express some very dark, weird, and twisted ideas with these Batman characters. Very interesting stuff, but personally, not my favorite. Although I do enjoy watching this movie every now and again. Up next is Batman 1989, Tim Burton's first Batman movie. And this one I quite like, mainly because this one has the Joker as the main antagonist, and I really like the Joker, and I really like Jack Nicholson. And I found him very entertaining throughout the whole movie. And I really like Michael Keaton as Batman in this one. I thought he did a pretty good job at separating himself as Batman and Bruce Wayne. And I really like the gothic look and architecture in Gotham City, and the overall feel and style of it all. It really feels like a dingy, dirty, crime-riddled city, and I really did enjoy that. This style also carried over into Batman Returns, but I think it was done better in this one. And even though parts of this movie are kind of weird, it doesn't get as weird or as strange as things in Batman Returns. Also, this movie gets a bonus points for showing general audiences that Batman is actually a darker character, because before this point, the only live-action version people were accustomed to was the Adam West version from the 60s. And really the only people around this time that knew Batman is a darker character were the people who read the comic books. But this gave the character more mass appeal and showed non-comic book readers the darker version of the Batman character. So it gets a big thumbs up for that. Next up, Batman Begins. Directed by Christopher Nolan, this was released in 2005, 8 years after Batman and Robin essentially killed the franchise, and it really brought the character back into the mainstream, and overall was a very interesting take on the character, because Nolan wanted to try to make it as realistic as possible, so he would take things from the comics and try to figure out how would it work in real life, and this concept was applied to all the Dark Knight trilogy. It's actually really interesting rewatching it and realizing that he's not Batman for literally half of the movie. The first hour is setting up Bruce Wayne, his origin, his journey, him finding his purpose, him acquiring his skills, but it wasn't boring at all. It was very interesting. And then during the second half of the movie when he is Batman, I really enjoyed that stuff too. And just like Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, I do like the portrayal of Gotham City here. You get to see the slums, you get to see how dirty and dingy the city is. And I really wish Nolan carried it over to the rest of the Dark Knight trilogy, but I did appreciate seeing it here. Overall, this movie served as a very good reintroduction of the Batman character to general audiences, considering the character was absent from the movies for about 8 years. Up next is The Dark Knight Rises. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of little things that bother me about this movie, but I won't go over that here. Instead, I'll point you to another video I did where I talk about the things that I don't like in the Nolan trilogy. So check that out if you actually want to know. Released in 2012 and directed again by Christopher Nolan, the reason why I ranked this one so high was because I feel like it's a good conclusion to the trilogy and to Bruce Wayne and Batman as a character. And I really like Tom Hardy as Bane here. He's actually one of my favorite parts of the movie. And I do like the scale and the level of the threat that Bane himself is presenting to Gotham City. Although I'm not gonna lie, I always flip-flop between Dark Knight Rises and Batman Begins for which one I like more. So next week I might change my mind. And you think Dark Knight Rises is the weakest in the trilogy? I can actually understand that. And if you like Batman Begins the most, I also understand that. But as of right now, as like a conclusion to the Nolan trilogy, I do enjoy it and I do really like it. And that's why I have it so high up. Next up is Batman v Superman. Though it's not a solo Batman movie, he is one of the main characters it's focused on, and his journey is one of the main focal points of the movie, so I'm going to include it. Released in 2016 and directed by my Lord and Savior Zack Snyder, I really love this movie because I love Ben Affleck's portrayal of Bruce Wayne here. This is a Batman who's 2 decades into his career, who basically just given up, and is at his absolute lowest point, who sees someone like Superman, this all-powerful demigod, and the destruction he can bring to the world, and talks himself into actually killing Superman because the risk is just too high to keep him alive. I really like that concept and direction for Batman, and it's not really a story that was told before in his movies. On top of that, I really like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, the soundtrack is awesome, and of course some really awesome amazing shots and cinematography. Yeah, I basically love everything about this movie. I love the 3-hour long slow burn story that it's telling, and when the action does happen, it's fucking great. But more importantly for Bruce Wayne himself, I like by the end of the movie he goes, man, I fucked up, which then will start to turn around for his character. Yeah, I really love this movie. Love the look of it, love the feel, love the direction they took the character and the story. I think it's all great, and this is actually one of my favorite comic book movies ever. Yeah, I don't care, sue me.
You are a weak man. A beta male. You are a fucking soy boy, a cuck.
And finally, we got The Dark Knight. Yeah, you knew this was going to be on here. I know many people consider this movie overrated because people just always sing its praises, but it's still really fucking good. Of course, first and foremost, this is easily my favorite Joker portrayal ever. Heath Ledger was absolutely fantastic, and his performance alone really elevated this whole movie. And I really love the cat and mouse game between him and Batman, and the crazy elaborate plans that the Joker comes up with. But something else that I actually really love is the pacing of this movie. I never realized that it's over 2.5 hours long. This movie does not feel that long at all, because from the first scene, it just fucking goes. It's just non-stop. And not to mention the performances are just great throughout. The score by Hans Zimmer is of course excellent, and all the scenes and scenarios that play out in this movie between Joker and anyone he interacts with, and Batman's hunt for him, is just great. Is it a little overrated? Yeah, sure, but it's still a pretty great movie. Hell, people think Spider-Man 2 is overrated, but it's also a great movie. So yeah, I know, big shocker that The Dark Knight is number 1, but it's for a good reason. It's a great movie. It's so damn good that even Christopher Nolan himself couldn't even top it. Yeah, so that's my list. There are a few honorable mentions I will give out to Under the Red Hood and Mask of the Phantasm, and the Lego Batman movie. Obviously I didn't include them because they aren't live action, but they're all very good and entertaining in their own right. As well as a huge honorable mention for Zack Snyder's Justice League. Technically it's not a Batman movie, it's more of a team-up movie, but I think Ben Affleck's Batman is great in it, and it really brings his character full circle and completes his arc from BVS. If I had to include it on my list, I would probably rank it right under Batman v Superman. And of course I asked you guys, how would you rank the live-action Batman movies? And the responses were about what I expected, usually with the Nolan trilogy in the top 3, and then the Joel Schumacher movies at the bottom, and then BVS and Zack Snyder's Justice League somewhere in the middle or near the top. Although I did spot several people like me who did put BVS very high up, so that was nice to see. So now I want you to go ahead, leave a comment, let me know how would you rank the live action Batman movies. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, go and drop a like on it. Thanks for watching.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, hypothetically, I'm a quirked up white boy. And if I was a quirked up white boy, then theoretically that would also mean that I'm busting it down, sexual style. Now, we understand now that I'm a quirked up white boy who's busting it down, sexual style. Does that in turn automatically mean that I'm now goated with the sauce? It's true. They don't want you to know that, but it's true.